What up? This is Rama Screen, and in the anticipation of Doors arriving in select theaters March 19th and on demand March 23 and on Blu-ray DVD April 6th, I'm here talking with the directing team of this new film, Saman Kesh, Jeff Desom, and Dugan O'Neill. How are you all this morning?
Good. Thank you. How are you?
Good. Thank you for taking the time. Congrats on the film. I've interviewed two directors at a time before, but never interviewed three. This is fascinating. Now, is this because Doors is an anthology in its nature? Is that correct?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Okay.
that's correct.
that
So,
is correct.
how did that work? Who's directing which segment?
Jeff directed the first segment. I directed the second segment, and Dugan directed the final segment, the segment in the woods with the lonely
Lamage.
Lamage.
Take me back to the beginning then. As I understand it, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Chris White is the one who came up with the concept. So, how did this collaboration happen? Did he approach you about it? And what was your reaction when you first heard what you're about to take on?
Yeah, Chris hit me up about 4 years ago now, and at the time there were other directors involved, and that film kind of evolved. Some of the directors kind of jumped onto other projects, and I ended up when I shot my segment about in 2000 end of 2016. We kind of realized that the film was a little bit different than what we intended, and we wanted to go a lot more psychological and cerebral. And so as we realized we wanted to go and find you know we wanted to tell two more stories and go find two directors that we thought could be great additions. Dugan jumped in about a year later in 2017, and Jeff jumped in a year after that, 2018. And we all kind of just collaborated on trying to tell kind of this complete story that also felt like three different personalities, kind of tackling sort of the same sort of psychological and meditative horror that we were going for.
I really like the designs in this film, not just the sets, but also the astronaut suits that the characters had to wear. Talk to me about that aspect of this film. Were those designs from the script, or were those something that you guys had to create from scratch and put together? What's the evolution of that process?
The suits were. I mean, we always knew we needed them to wear some kind of suit, and we wanted it to be something iconic but also functional. And so, me and my team basically just referenced some films, referenced like Fighter Pilot. We were kind of big on like the astronauts prior to going to the moon, like when they would put people in space and they would just do kind of hang out the spaceship, but like not actually go any further outside than the orbit of the Earth. We kind of were motivated a little by that. Also, the helmets are inspired by Guy's helmet from Daft Punk. That was basically it. It was kind of a little bit of this like messy, kind of grungy, but also kind of slick look kind of merged together. And so that kind of, started from the script knowing we needed it. And then we just designed it until it was right. And that's what we used.
Nice. Thank you for sharing that. As I was watching this film, though, I get the sense of maybe a bit Stephen King, maybe a bit of Twilight Zone. Were those some of the influences for the tone and the style, or were there other influences that also factored in?
I think Twilight Zone was something that we kind of, a lot of us kind of honed in on. I think all of us, we talked about like Sphere and Solaris, but also what was nice, all three of us kind of had our own movies that we would bring into the situation. Like we would watch movies that specifically tied into each of our segments. I don't know if Dugan, Jeff, you wanted to kind of mention some of the films that you guys had in mind working
I
on
know
segments.
that we, like early on when we were writing, we mentioned things like Breakfast Club, which
Yeah,
has very little to do with horror, but it
yeah,
was fun to sort of throw these kids into a horror scenario, like a horror sci-fi scenario, and see how they would deal with it. Um, yeah, so I think that was a bit more of an unusual, uh, less obvious of an inspiration.
yeah.
And yeah, I mean, for us, we were I think for the script, we were more. I mean, obviously, I love grounded sci-fi, where you get to play with more of like people, relationships and people's, and it's more character based rather than being necessarily in space, but just kind of tying it into Earth and grounding it and having the logic make sense. But I just know we wanted the end to kind of be this Coen Brothers-esque kind of shit show of things that kind of just human nature, like a Shakespearean kind of blow up. And then the other movie that I remember referencing a lot with my DP Todd Van Hazel is Jurassic Park. Just like we wanted to capture that wonder of seeing a door up close. So that was something we tried to portray in the shoot, while we were shooting, and just kind of capturing that kind of, always kind of looking up and being, from the like a lower angle on our characters, and kind of the classic Jurassic Park,
That's good. I enjoy science fiction films like this that are trippy, psychological, and twisted. Sometimes it boggles the mind, but it's a tricky thing, isn't it? Because you don't want to leave the audiences too perplexed. In your opinion, how do you strike that balance?
I was just going to say one thing that I think if you get too in the weeds and too detailed about a made up science or logic of why certain things are happening, it can start to confuse people, because then they're starting to think about, how something might actually work or exist. Whereas if you just give enough information on that, then it still suspends, people are still in the story and believing what's happening. The suspension of disbelief is still intact. So that's something for us that I think, we were trying to find that balance.
I think that played for all three of us is kind of like, what do you need to talk about? What don't you need to talk about? And I think a lot of us, it was easier to go, we need to talk about this. It wasn't like, that wasn't the hard part. The hard part was like cutting out what we didn't need to talk about, and allowing people to make it up or be okay. Like there's a small percentage of people who just need to know everything. But as Dugan said, it's like, you don't want them worrying about the wrong things, you want them worrying about the right things. And as long as they know what to be scared of, what's going on, and there's enough there for them to kind of think about it. We always knew it was a cerebral film. We knew it wasn't going to be some sort of like tightly packaged kind of film for like your grandma. You know what I mean? This is for people who kind of like getting stuck in their head and getting into like a little mind trip. You know what I mean? So we knew that that's kind of what we like and who we are and what we're interested in for this film. And that's kind of where we danced. And so it was just more about our own taste of this is confusing. Like the worst thing is to have like an Interstellar type movie where you just talk about the rules of the movie the whole time rather than actually having a movie. And Jeff, I don't want to add anything to that.
Oh, that sums pretty much. Yeah, no, I think we were, we were very conscientious of like focusing on our characters and just making sure that, whatever struggles they had between themselves and within themselves, that was what we would focus on. And the door was just a catalyst for that would sort of bring that out, emphasize that. But we didn't, like, for our segment at least, that like by then it was, the door just appeared and it's really like nobody knows how this is working. So we couldn't go too deep anyway in exploring how like the inner workings of the door were. And it was more of it was more a discovery through characters' eyes.
Final fun hypothetical question for all three of you. If alien doors suddenly show up on our Earth, would you venture into it, or do you stay as far away from it as possible?
Well, I would say my answer when I was making it is to get really far away. But as things have changed in my life, I probably would surrender to the door.
I'm going in. I am going in.
It depends. I mean, if the door has a certain influence over you, then and you couldn't help it, it's hard to say what you would do. If I had free will, I would maybe run away from it.
Well, for my fans at home, everybody go check out Doors, arriving in select theaters March 19th, on demand March 23, and on Blu-ray DVD April 6th. Saman, Jeff, and Dugan, thank you for talking to me, and congratulations.
Thanks so much.